Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Shells and Shadows podcast. Today, my guest is Brian Rosen, aka Uncle Brian, aka my uncle. Welcome to my show, and I'm really excited to see where this conversation leads to today. Touch on some very important pieces of our shared stories.
Yeah, I've been looking forward to it ever since you invited me. Yeah.
Yeah, part of the reason, and I'll share about why I reached out to you to do this is because when I was producing the podcast that you did with my dad, I got to hear parts of your story that I'd never heard before, and I realized that we have a lot of overlap in our experiences, specifically as young men, the changes that we went through that weren't necessarily by choice, but just situations we were placed in, and given the opportunity to either grow and move forward or not. And I can say that I think we both made the decision to take our life and our life decisions into our own hands, and take responsibility. Like, who am I at such a young age? And it's not an experience that many people have. It's very unique. So I'd love to jump into it if you want to. I gave a little overview, but I'll let you go right into your story and
Sure.
start sharing.
Yeah, absolutely. There are there are a lot of similarities. So when I was younger than you at the time, it was fifth grade. Halfway through my fifth grade year over winter break, I was living with my mom. My parents had divorced a couple years prior, and she and I did not see eye to eye. We didn't get along. We fought quite a bit, and the only other person in the house was my younger brother, and he's 7.5 years younger. So he just was just a little kid who steered clear of it. And so my mom sent me to a boys' home, and so literally one day I was living at home, and the next day I was in a completely different environment. And it couldn't have been any more different. So my house parents, my house father in particular, was super strict. He was a chief master sergeant in the Air Force, retired. And the first night I was there, I can just remember being so unsettled, having been literally uprooted from my mom's house to this place that I was completely unfamiliar with, and just kind of thrown in with some other boys my age. And it was extremely stressful. And I was so young, I didn't really know what to make of it. And I just kind of figured it out quickly, how to toe the line, so to speak. And yeah, it was, I don't know how to describe it.
I mean, I relate to the feeling. You were 11, you
Yeah,
said?
11 years old.
Yeah. So I'll give a little bit of background on my end.
Mm-hmm.
I was 16, so a little bit older,
Mm-hmm.
but I also didn't know where I was going when a man showed up at my house and said, "It's time to go. We're taking you to a special school where you'll spend as much time as you need, getting better," or whatever the wording was.
Sure.
To me, I think I blacked out most of that day. Didn't know what was going on.
Yeah.
And you show up in this new environment, and you have these new people that replace the authority figures in your life that your parents once were,
Mm-hmm.
and new peers that replace what your siblings once were. And many of which, I don't know if this was similar to you, many of which are hard to live with because they're going through their struggles, some more extreme than you, some less. And this is life. This is life now for the foreseeable future, and you don't know when that end is in sight. So that first moment of arrival is shock unlike anything I ever experienced in my life. The closest thing I could describe to it is, I'd say, death of a loved one where you're grieving and you're in denial. And I know that sounds extreme, but you, in a sense, are grieving your old life, your
Yeah,
autonomy, people that you left behind, even
sure.
though they're not gone, they're not part of your life anymore, at least for this chapter. So, very intense feelings. I'm sure even more so as an 11-year-old.
Yeah.
You have less of a sense of self at that age as well.
Oh, there's no question. Yeah. 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 Shock for sure. And I can relate when you mentioned that you blacked it out. Like that was definitely um, my coping mechanism. I just kind of shut down. So I guess I felt like I just kind of created this shell, if you will, so that I didn't have to feel this intense emotion that I hadn't experienced before.
And I think that's part of the reason why, at least I ended up there, is because there were a lot of things I wasn't able or willing to face.
Mm-hmm.
So it all opened up at once and in a very extreme way.
Yeah.
Let's take a little bit of a step back. Tell me a little bit about why you think you ended up there, because I've spent a lot of time blaming my parents and then forgiving them and realizing that the part I played in ending up there was huge,
Sure.
and that like these things don't just happen to you.
Mm-hmm.
We have a big role in them. So if you could summarize it, like
Yeah, for sure.
what led you to this place?
You know, what's interesting is I'm kind of, I've come to the realization that the opposite is true for
Okay.
me. And that's something, you know, when I discussed this with your dad, I didn't really go into as much as I should have.
Okay.
But what I've learned through, you know, work that I've done as an adult on myself through therapy and other modalities is that, you know, I blamed myself. You know, I was a bad kid. I wasn't listening. I wasn't this. I wasn't that. When in reality, my dad wasn't there.
Mhm.
And, you know, my mom was left to do, you know, the work of parenting and raising children, myself and my brother. But she herself wasn't just not equipped to parent, but she had her own struggles with depression, at least some level of mental illness as well. And while those things aren't her fault, they're certainly not mine. And I think whether I was trying to protect, you know, her physically or emotionally, that in doing that, it kind of just placed the blame on me. And certainly there were things, you know, I was doing that led to the, you know, the struggles that she and I had. But I was a kid, you know, I was 11 and so, and younger. But when I went away for the first time, I was 11. And so I'm at a place now where I look back at my 11-year-old self and understand that it wasn't really his fault.
That's big,
It
because
is
I'm
big,
sure you were being told the opposite at the time.
100%. I was being told that, and I just believed it.
I'm For those listening, I'm producing and hosting at the same time, so we got the cameras working better now. I think where I see that come up in my story is, yes, obviously we have our role in it, but when you look at that age and that point in time, 11, 16, a little bit different, but my story started at 13. That's when I guess you could call it my downhill into darkness started. And that was when I moved to Israel. My parents moved us, and it, the experience and the intensity of it, between the culture, which was completely new to me and
Sure.
very intense and not really nurturing of my sensitive soul, and the isolation, not being able to speak the right language, and I think also watching my parents struggle in a way that they never did because they had always had a secure life and job and all of that. Um, those are things that I don't feel like was in my control.
Sure.
And again, like, I can't blame myself for that. Those are my circumstances. Just like, you can't blame yourself for the situation you were in with your father and your mother's mental health. And yeah, it's a grapple between what do I own and what is not mine to own.
Yep. 100%. Um, I'm thinking about you in particular, and I mean, I knew you at that time. I mean, I've known you your whole life, and I wasn't, in your life on a regular basis at that time. Um, but you know, your Aunt Becky shared with me, some of the things that were going on, and of course, I thought back to, my situation, um, and just how I, struggled when I was young, um, into my, 13 and 16 for sure. Um, and just the difference for me, was how capable your parents, were and are, and just what amazing people they are in and of themselves, but also as parents. And, you know, being a parent is tough.
I've
And
heard.
yeah, I know. I now know. And so I also have that perspective. Um, at the time, my sons, your cousins were quite a bit younger, and so I hadn't really experienced some of the things that your parents were experiencing with you.
Mhm.
I would, later experience
Yeah.
those things for sure. Um, and so it was hard just from the outside looking in, knowing what all of you were dealing with.
Yeah, I want to now dive deep into the experience itself.
Hmm.
Um, why don't you give me a little bit of the structure of your program, what the goals were for a parent sending their kid there,
Yeah,
what help they offered, how much of it was useful to you, how much of it did you help yourself on your own,
sure.
and where you're at with that.
Okay. I think my experience, I lived at the Omaha Home for Boys, which is a boys' home, obviously in Omaha, Nebraska, where I grew up. And when I went there, again, I felt like it was because I was a bad kid,
Hmm.
and by default, all of the boys that I lived with were also bad. Um, we there's a camp. It's a campus, and it's set up. There's different cottages. They call them cottages, and there's 12 boys in each cottage. I think there's six, and they group them by age. And so I was in the youngest cottage when I was there. The first time I was actually there twice,
Okay.
and I think the youngest might have been 10. I want to say there might have been a third grader, but definitely fourth grader, fifth graders like myself in sixth grade. Um, in terms of a program, I don't really remember there being a specific program or being aware of any specific goals other than to get better, um,
Right.
to learn better behavior, to um, just be able to, um, I don't even really know how to describe it other than, um, I guess I can't put words to it right now.
Yeah.
Um, but I definitely felt like the reason I was there was because I was bad, because I behaved poorly. And, the other boys that were there, some of them were parent placed like I was, and some of them were court placed. They'd broken the law in some way, shape, or form. And I did, you know, have this feeling like I was not with my friends anymore. I was with these boys, and these were now my people in a way. And so um, I got to know them, I guess, as much as an 11-year-old can get to know other kids his age that he had no experience with whatsoever prior. And I also, as part of my experience there, we went to public schools
Okay.
in that neighborhood, and so really I met such a wide variety of kids, boys and girls um, that differed quite a bit from what I was used to. Just different part of town, different upbringing, different cultures, people that didn't look like me. I really hadn't experienced that before. And in hindsight, I'm really grateful that I had that experience at that age.
Hmm.
And it definitely has helped shaped who I am today, in terms of, when I meet people for the first time. And um, before that experience, and had I not had that experience, I probably would have looked for things that were similar. Whereas now I actually seek out and embrace differences. And I really enjoy, learning new things, learning um, about, you know, people and what makes them different from me. And especially when we have different opinions about things. And I like to hear their perspective, and I like to give mine. And some things, we keep, and other things we bring in.
Yeah, I think the best way to sum up an experience like that is there's so many blessings and so many, you call it curses, just
Sure.
downsides in a way. I also got to meet just a wide variety of people that I otherwise wouldn't have been exposed to. I mean,
Sure.
there was one or two Jewish kids where I went throughout the whole time.
Okay.
And beyond that, I had never really spent much time around people who weren't Jewish in my life, coming from Israel
Sure.
and like a tight Jewish community before that.
Yep.
And so it was a brand new experience. Now, the positive side of that is I got really close with some of these guys. For at my program, we lived on a ranch. It was one big house, probably at most 20 guys at a time. There was a schoolhouse within the building, kitchen, and everything was on site. Um, and you become really close to the people you're around. Some of the people were kind of, I guess I'd say, on par with the stage I was at, where some were struggling with addiction. I wasn't, but overall mental health struggles, needing some more guidance to turn their life around. And I connected a lot to those kids. And then other kids were ordered to be there by the court as
Mm-hmm.
well. And what I felt is that there was an inappropriate mixture of the types of people in the same program receiving the same kind of treatment, because you'd have kids like myself who really just needed the extra therapeutic attention. I wasn't failing out of school. I wasn't getting in trouble with the law, but I had some deep wounds that I needed extra guidance to heal. Other kids um, had, and no judgment, but other kids had been um, addicted to heroin, failing out of school, breaking the law. Many of them weren't able to turn their lives around. I know someone who had overdosed and passed away since. And
Mm-hmm.
many more who are in prison now, and a good handful more who are still struggling with addiction. And I don't regret the experience. Not that I had much of a choice. I don't regret the the connections I made with kids who are different than me, I would say, because it gave me a lot of perspective on where I came from and how fortunate I am to have the parents that I have.
Right.
Right? Like you were saying, you got to observe that, and it also made me fortunate to feel that I wasn't someone who struggled with addiction, and I wasn't failing out of school, and I got to connect with some of those guys as much as it was difficult to, because we
Mhm.
were so different. But had I not had that experience, I think I would have been a different person.
So, in thinking about those interactions that you had and where you were when you arrived, it's hard to speculate, but what might your life look like
Had I not
had you not
gone,
gone and had that experience and interacted, with those boys and had that perspective of, wow, this is where they are. I'm glad I'm not there. I feel for them, but thank God I'm not there.
um, I I don't think I would have been as motivated to heal what I needed to, and not to not to compare. But when you're in a situation like that, all you can do is compare.
Hmm.
Where am I at, and where are others at? The people that are in my surroundings, because it made my problem seem a little bit smaller, and that gave me a little bit of hope. And it feels even backwards to say, because these are people, and like I don't want to use their struggles to make myself feel better, and that's not how
Sure.
it was.
Right.
What it was is, I know where I know where my life could have headed. I know where it still could, and I have the power within my own hands to prevent it from going there.
Hmm.
Had I not had that, had I been in maybe like, call it like a softer program that wasn't as intense, where I wasn't watching kids get restrained, um, and fighting each other and running away and getting picked up by the cops, and cheeking their medication, taking it all at once, like things that I've never been exposed to,
Sure.
and many people don't. I don't know if it would have pushed me in the same way. I'd say that.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. Um, there was some of that for me too. I mean, certainly there were some boys, where I lived at the Omaha for Boys, who had some of those tendencies. Many of them had been, not so much the younger ones, but um, many of the boys who lived there had been in trouble with the law. Um, there was drug addiction, um, running away, um, all kinds of different things that, um, in a way, kind of caused me to question, well, why am I even here? Um, but at the same time, there were some other boys that, hadn't, you know, gotten to that point. And I don't know, had I not gone, would if I would have gotten to that point, but it's possible. Um, I did, once I was there and kind of understood, what was happening and what my experience was like, it did cause me to take a look at, um, not at 11, but as I got older, to take a look at, myself and my tendencies. And, like you were saying, it was really within my control whether I went down, the road of, um, drugs and crime and, all these different things, um, or, to stay on a better path, um, one that was healthier, and just more in alignment with who I really didn't know who I was, but felt like I was.
And there's plenty of paths you could have gone down that weren't as extreme
Mm-hmm.
as
Sure.
drugs and crime that you probably also chose not to go down because of this experience. Like you said,
Mm-hmm.
like that's an extreme, but
Sure.
there's plenty of other ways
Oh
to
yeah.
live
Dozens.
unhealthily.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
So you had a lot of time, it seems, to reflect on this after, when you were a little bit older.
Mm-hmm.
What what would you say is the biggest thing you learned during this time in your life? If you can pinpoint maybe a few key takeaways where maybe the experience overall wasn't positive, maybe it was what was necessary, maybe it wasn't your fault, but what do you take from it? What do you carry from it, if anything?
I I'm a firm believer in we are given what we need. We're given um, what we can handle, even though sometimes it feels like quite a bit more than we can handle.
Mm-hmm.
And we then have the opportunity to rise to that occasion. And so for me, I look at it like that. I also look at it like I just wasn't meant to be at home during that time. Um, you know, I didn't, the truth is, I didn't want to be there. I got my wish. Um, I didn't want to go to a boys' home. I thought I wanted to live with my dad, just because it's what I didn't have. Grass is always greener.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but as I look back, on my childhood, um, not so much who I was, but who my parents were. And they were pretty young. My parents were barely 21, I think, when I was born.
Oh wow,
Really young.
it's very young.
Yeah. And so, not an excuse. It's just information.
Yeah.
Um, but I feel like, I wasn't supposed to be with my mom during the years I was away, and wasn't supposed to be living with my dad either. And I guess I'll never really know the difference or what it would have been like, but I do believe that. I believe I just wasn't meant to be there. Was I meant to be in a boys' home? I guess so. In terms of my takeaway, I think it's what I touched on earlier and what you touched on, was just having that experience of not just getting to know people different, from myself and from yourself, but living with them, day to day. And I think, needless to say, it changes you.
Yeah, it does change you. And the experience itself may not have been all positive, but the lessons and like the skill sets that can come out of it
Mm-hmm.
sometimes are. I was roommates with a guy from California, and he was a gang member.
Okay.
And I'm like this like rabbi's son from Boston. Like I was pretty short at the time too, and
Sure.
I'm living with this guy, and I never expected to be in this situation, and we bonded over fitness.
Love
And
that.
he's a bigger guy, and I was a little scrawny at the time, and so like we had different goals, but every night we'd hit some push-ups in the room together.
Yeah.
And I don't think about it often, but going out of the world after that and meeting people and connecting with others, I think it definitely gave me a more open mind. But not only that, like a desire to meet weird and strange people, because they may be weird and strange to me, but like they're just others living in different ways in this world, doing it their own way.
Yeah.
So for others, and like there's plenty of people in my social circles now that think that I do weird shit like jump in the river and boulder and whatnot. But I love that I can be friends with the guys who are going to Shabbat dinner every Friday night, and like the hippies who jump in the creek with me and do crazy breath workouts at the park,
Yeah.
and be in those two worlds at once.
Yeah.
So yeah, not the most pleasant experience and pushes you
Yeah.
outside your comfort zone, but
Yeah.
the places it can take you are just, it's fascinating.
Yeah. It truly is fascinating. And I can relate to some degree. Like, definitely spent time with people, as I mentioned before, who were very different from me. But now, like in my life, when I look at like my network, it's so diverse. And I believe that it wouldn't be that way were it not for what I experienced as a kid. Because I know plenty of people who don't have that. You know, they've, and I don't think it's necessarily that they don't want it. In fact, I know it's not. It's just they just have never done it.
I'm sure something else that, I mean, you spoke a little bit about it. I'm sure something like stayed with you from this experience is your understanding of parenting.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned that when I went through this, you didn't have boys who were at that age, but
Right.
then you did.
Sure.
And like, were there moments where you thought back to the decisions your parents made to send you to this place?
Yeah.
And did those influence how you decided to parent your kids?
Yeah, it did. I think it was more what I received from my parents versus where I went and where I lived. And my parents, they just weren't equipped to parent. Um, my dad was aloof. He wasn't there physically. I never lived with him. Now people have parenting schedules like week on, week off, or 5-2-2-5 or whatever it is. They didn't really have that in the 80s. Maybe it was like one weekend a month or something.
Mm-hmm.
It was quite a bit different than it is now. And maybe that's a generalization, but I feel like it's true. And so, yeah, with my boys, with Jacob and Sam, I'm not saying, I'm all that, but I am more than my parents were, for sure. And I definitely have some strengths when it comes to parenting. And I also recognize my weaknesses, and I seek out support, from friends, from other parents, from therapists for that. But for the most part, when I have faced struggles, either myself with the boys or Becky and I as their parents, I do think back to that time and how my mom, in a way, chose to deal with it, but really it was her only option. And that doesn't excuse it; it just explains it.
Mm-hmm.
I would have been open to doing that if it was merited, but we never got to that point, and I'm grateful for that. But the boys have certainly had, their struggles over the years at different ages.
It's interesting just hearing the experience of parenting from the other side. I know, and I've had a bigger understanding in recent years that when I one day have a child, it's all going to click.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to see things from the other perspective,
Mm-hmm.
and like all at once.
Yeah.
And I know that experience is coming at some point, but almost looking ahead at that, I've definitely also tried to put myself in my parents' shoes and think to myself, like, what does it really take for a parent who loves their kid immensely to send them to a bunch of strangers who say they're qualified in helping their child and keep them there for a year,
Yeah.
living separately, not knowing what's going to happen, and not knowing how much your child might be suffering, and watching that initial moment of them leaving the home just completely scared, distraught, broken. What does it take for a parent to make that decision?
Yeah.
And my answer that I've come up with, at least from my experience, is it takes a whole lot of love.
Yeah.
And that's like, I don't think I'll fully understand it until I'm in the position that you were in with your boys, or that
Yeah.
my parents were in with me. But I know it's there, and I'm looking forward to getting to experience that. I think it'll bring me a lot closer to my parents
Yeah.
in doing so.
Yeah. There's no question it will. I mean, I can tell you based on what I observed and witnessed during that time is it took a hell of a lot of love
Yeah.
for them to make that decision and to commit to that. You know, for you, for them, for your family. Um, it was it was selfless. It was a selfless act, um, in my humble opinion, for them to have the strength really to recognize that that's what you needed, and that's also the help that they needed, um, to get you to where they knew you could go.
Yeah, I it's it's very refreshing to hear others' experiences that are not, maybe not the same, but similar to mine.
Mm-hmm.
I've met a lot of people actually in recent years who have gone to wilderness therapy and were sent off into the woods for 4 months, and or people who went to residential treatment centers or boys' homes. And something about it, not just that there's a shared experience, but also that no one understands what that's like.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone has their own struggles in life, obviously, and there's many experiences that people have in the world that many others wouldn't understand. But feeling that shared experience in this specific instance is, it's very heartwarming, um, and it's a good reminder for me, at least, that what happened was for the best. Getting to listen to other people who've gone through that experience of getting sent away and coming out a more whole person is, it's exciting.
Mm-hmm.
I love these conversations. I love meeting people who've gone through this as well.
Yeah, for sure. Um, Unlike you, I've not really met anyone who's had similar experiences. But to have, you know, this conversation right now, and even just from the time you invited me and just thinking about it, like you said, it warms my heart to know that you and I can connect on this. And, to see, um, and I don't know the full extent of where you were,
Mm-hmm.
um, but I can sure as hell see where you are now. And just based on, what little I do know about what you were and what I'm seeing today, it's one of the most powerful things I can think of. Just the person you become, and just all the things I see you do, just, with, on at Boulder and on campus and with the Jewish community, and how you've just time after time stepped up into these leadership roles. You are a natural.
I appreciate it, and it's it's been it's been nice having you by my side to experience these things. You took me to my first Boulder game, so
That's right. I won't tell everybody what you were wearing.
definitely not rooting for Nebraska.
Definitely not.
But yeah, I do appreciate that, and it's been it's been nice having you by my side
Yeah, for
throughout
sure.
this journey.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I want to shift for a moment.
Yeah.
Today is November 11th, 11/11.
Mm-hmm.
I want to just give you an opportunity to share a little bit about what this number means to you and what you're doing with numbers like it.
Oh, I appreciate that. Thanks. As you know, I recently celebrated the 1 year anniversary with my girlfriend Steph, and we actually met on November 1st at a B'nai Mitzvah. And November 1st is 111, 11/1. And Steph and I were inspired by our meeting and by the love we have for each other, and that love that has grown since, to launch an apparel brand. We call it 11/1. And 111 is an angel number, any triple number really, 222 through 999, and they all have their unique meanings. And so we developed an apparel line of sweatshirts and hoodies and t-shirts and hats. People can create, they choose the angel number that speaks most to them, and they can have it on, any of those garments. And we feel like we're sharing our love and spreading love into the world by doing this. And it's been a passion project of ours now for several months as we conceptualized it and brought it to fruition. And we launched it a week and a half ago on 11/1. Yeah. And we actually met on the Big Island of Hawaii, and we traveled back there not only to celebrate our anniversary, but to launch this brand.
That's great. So for anyone who may be interested, where can they find your brand?
So we're online. We're actually looking at going into some retail as well. But for now, you can find us at 111brand.com. And all the shirts are made to order here in Denver, and can ship anywhere.
Amazing. Well, if anything, those numbers represent synchronicity.
Yeah.
And I feel like our conversation was brought about by the synchronicity of me happening to produce the podcast with you and my dad and hearing your story.
Sure.
So glad we get to bring this full circle and have this conversation. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me. I hope I'm sure you know how much it means to me.
Take care, everyone.